Welcome to a special Coffee with Dragon Tuesday, the December 9th special life update. Rock and roll. Always gotta begin commence with gratitude. Grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee paid, Netflix 50-50, got some food, got some coffee, got this new mug, a red, RED, my favorite color, with a red cardinal on top of the tree, and on the other side you got some green and some red, the official colors of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. Yours truly, Adrian Hanna, Dragon, pledge your allegiance, it is 12:21. We're gonna have some cup of coffee. Noon, past noon. I had to do some business earlier. Cleaned a little bit of my room. Did a little bit of meditation, and did a little bit of geopolitics. And I was stuck a bit on geopolitics. So of course, because it's my special interest, as you don't know, special interest as it relates to people who have this neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, also known as HFA. We have special interests, and those special interests preoccupy our whole daily routines on a daily basis. Sometimes hours and hours I spend daily just doing analysis and theorizing and speculative intellectual theorizing about all geopolitical events which transpire on a daily basis, because you know how it is. Three things never sleep. Money never sleeps. The sun always never sleeps. The sun always, every minute there's a sunrise and a sunset somewhere in the world. And geopolitics. And we're gonna put some coffee. I'm financially stressed. My only stress now is financially, but that besides my financial stress, I gotta say that I'm in pretty good mood. I'm just a bit extra stressed because of the damage incurred in the. Gotta take responsibility for the washer, not the dryer, and we had it for like 3 years. And before that, I used to go do laundry in the laundromats here across Montreal. I went to different places. When I lived here, I go to 2 different places, but where I lived in the old place, I used to have like 4 different places I used to go to. But this is instant powdered coffee. I bought this for 99 cents, 50 grams, which of course if you calculate mathematically, it was best for me to get this one in order to save actually about $1 for each. So in terms of the quantity, the quality, of course, is a bit less in the terms of the quality, but of course in the terms of the quantity, which I bought 3 for $3, considering that I got 150 grams, because this is 50 grams times 3, that's 150. That's 150 grams. If you triple it in mathematical calculations, the quantity, and it only cost $3, that means that I saved basically $3 or a little bit more than $3 for buying 3, because it's the equivalent of the same quantity as buying for $6.99 or $6.49 or $7 the same instant coffee. So I'm gonna be grateful for this. It's actually a Ukrainian company from Ukraine. It says there's Ukraine, so it's natural instant powdered, but it's not bad actually. It's not bad. It's for the rock and roll, and I gotta be grateful that I have it. And it doesn't say the country of origin. Does not say the country of origin, but that's some things which we can speculate that is Brazil, Vietnam, Colombia. It could be Africa, Ethiopia, Ivory Coast. It could be Cuba. It could be Guatemala. It could be many countries throughout the world which produce coffee. With the top 10, probably is one of the countries in the top 10 producing countries. Which produces the coffee. I always like to get a little bit of that detailed information, probably because of Asperger's. Sometimes if you see somebody doing this in a store, see, and I've been doing it. I remember about 2016, when my friend at one point was, people are staring at you like, what is, and they're wondering, what are you doing, and I still do it to the day, because it's something which, of course, it's part of being autistic, being on the spectrum, Asperger's, inspecting objects like this close to the eyes and turning them and looking. So, I responded when she said that, my anonymous friend, if I make $1 million, I'm gonna give half. I said, if I do that, do you know she said, what I'm doing? I said, I know what you're doing. You're looking for the details, the date of production, the country of origin of the product, where it's made, or those little details like the numbers and their signification and their classification. For example, if you see here, there's small written numbers like ISO 9001, and then ISO there's 22,000, right? So you have the different, these are of course international standard organizations, and you have 2 different numbers and they correlate to something. So of course that's of interest if you're into world trade, international finance, import, export, international trade, and geopolitics. That will be some concern and some understanding and intellectual for intellectual knowledge, or just to have as common knowledge for what is exactly the significance of those little numbers there. So you would be proficient to look at certain details like that. You know, this is an Aspie thing, and I remember she was drawing my attention that people were looking at me, and I was inspecting the object. I said, you know, people are staring at you. You know, they're wondering if you're off the rails, or you know, if you're. Because I said I know what you're doing, but people find it very weird. And yes, Aspie, we have these weird traits. You know, weird trait and characteristics. I don't use the word symptoms much, and it can be considered symptoms and a disability. In certain things, it is so, but not in other things. We have our strengths which counterbalance each other. You know, as Aspie. So, cheer up for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, my fellow Aspies, the train conductors, the plumbers. I always gotta give some rock and roll loving to the daycare workers changing diapers, to the construction workers, to the public workers across the 10, the 50, and the 3. Always for the 10, the 50, and the 3. For the dream, the 63 fusion of the Imperial Republican complex. My dream, fundamentally a mass public-private partnership to be incorporated across the North American civilizational complex, and of course to implement my Trinity of theories and CIT citizen integration theory, DRT detrofusion theory, and DFT democratic fusion theory via Trinity of theories, of course to be implemented via love, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, plumbers, electricians, the daycare workers changing diapers, the nurses I gotta salute, the public workers changing some aqueducts, and all those Aspies of the world, and my fellow LGBTQ community, because I'm part of both, you know. Friends with benefits only, you gotta be 18 plus. So to be 18 plus, I do the math, I can do some math. So you gotta be showing on your birth certificate, or if you're gonna show me some ID, it has to be before December 9, 2007, right? Because 2025 minus 2007 is 18. So today being December 9th, you got to make that calculation. No play around. Cheers. Friends with benefits only. I don't will to waste nobody's time. Don't waste mine, you know. I'm androgynous, pansexual. An artist, an athlete, a philosopher who's financially stressed at the moment, but I paid my rent, you know, for the month of December. My rent, I paid it. Paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, paid my Netflix 50/50, so that's what I gotta do some watch. I didn't watch yet the Frankenstein. In the past years, you can check all my videos past the 7 years. I did a lot of movie reviews in the past. Something which I want to do in the future, but now it's gonna be Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and you know I'm gonna make call it a heart for the producers, you know, the artists and athletes. It's December 9th. Please give some good charity for the holidays. If I would have been a billionaire, I would have loved to actually. I would have loved to actually just give some charity, you know. I would have put some people to work, youth, or even I would have given the opportunity. I would have went in shelters, men and women, you know, for both men and women, and I would have said, hey, you want to make some money before the holidays? And I would have started before December 1st with community organizations, with security services, and I said, hey, if I would have been a billionaire, I would have taken, you know, if I would have had like some billions, I would have put some billions, and some millions, I would have put some millions, you know, in a percentile accordance for this project, and we would have went across North America with some trucks. We would have bought wholesale candies, toys, trees, and lights, because I love the holiday lights. I really, really love. My anonymous friend put some holiday lights right above me, so I really love the holiday lights. And here in Quebec, we have Hydro-Quebec, so I gotta give a shout out because I'm doing this video, you know, to the workers of the past, civilization being a privilege. That electricity here is clean, zero pollution, zero emission. Cheers. I'm always, for years, you can see some of my videos dating for more than 7 years in my videos on the mountain when I meet some tourists, and I mention them with eagerness, you know, because it's something that I'm really excited about and just proud, you know, as a Quebecer Canadian. And the fact that here our electricity doesn't pollute, the consumption of electricity is Hydro-Quebec, so it's hydroelectric. We got 63 dams, providentially like that 63, where we're going to be the French state in the 63 Imperial Republic, and our electricity also goes to about 5 or 6 states. 5 or 6 states. 5 or 6 states. It also goes to about 5 or 6 states. I believe 6 states now. Six states, and it also goes all the way to Manhattan. About 1/5, equivalent of 20% of the electricity of Manhattan Island in New York, proper 1/5. It's a pretty considerable amount in percentage. It comes from Hydro-Quebec. Imagine, hey? So I gotta salute that. That's why we have to get the North American perspective, as my philosophies as the North American centric. You know, as much as I am a citizen of the world as I can be, I am a North American Canadian, and it would be pretense for me not to state otherwise. It would be just pretense, you know. Although I am a mystic as well, I believe in reincarnations, in my past reincarnations from ancient Egypt till now, ancient Egypt from was I a priestess or a goddess, as I'm a priestess or a goddess now, if you want to commission me to do some drag. Actually, it's interesting that I saw 3 drags the other day. I was reading on Conchita Wurst and a performance, and the fact that Conchita Wurst and I don't have a birth certificate, but I have all my I think what happened to my birth certificate years ago, I think I had, there's libraries, many libraries here in Montreal where you put books and you take books all across. They're open. They're in open space. They're in open public space, or they're in open public space, and you have several across Montreal, right? So they're about this big. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and you just open the you just open them. They're called public mini libraries, and you put or you take books. So I take sometimes. Now I just took the last ones that I took. I showed them last time. For example, I took this book. See this book, and I took Tom Clancy the other day, my Tom Clancy book, and I took this one, To Kill a Mockingbird. I haven't started reading it yet. Maybe over the weekend. It's a classic North American literature, and I took other books like Tom Clancy or Plato. So I believe years ago, maybe about 7, 8 years ago, maybe just before COVID, 6 years ago, because COVID, 2020, COVID started. So I had COVID, I got triple vaxxed. I encourage all to keep the protocols of public hygiene, the hand sanitization of the hands, and sanitize the hands, disinfect and sanitize the hands. Super important to disinfect and sanitize the hands, It's super important to sanitize, disinfect the hands. Something which I also got to be acknowledged, of course, in the acknowledgement, of course, of doing the prudence and the interactions, of course, of doing it myself. I realize there's a financial burden attributed to it, a financial additional cost of these tough economic times for many of my fellow North Americans, Canadians. I realize that is perhaps a burden over much, but nonetheless, I think what happened to my birth certificate was I had a book and I put it back in the library, and I had it. I was reading and I was putting it as a reminder where I was on the reading pages where I stopped reading. So I think that's what happened to my birth certificate. It was a copy years and years and years ago, or in a book that I returned to the library. It could be that my birth certificate is actually been sitting at the Bibliothèque et Archives Nationales for maybe 9 years. It's possible. Yeah, I think that's what happened. Because I was cleaning the other day. Well, I was cleaning on full moons. I clean and I clean. I try to see. Maybe I'll do another one. Check all the books and everything that I have again by New Year's. Before New Year's, maybe. And before Christmas, 24th, 25th of December, Xmas, Do a 23rd of December big cleaning, I guess. And maybe I'm going to find it. But nonetheless, the point is that me and Conchita Wurst, the drag, share a birthday, share a birthday. And then I saw that it's a Scorpio, as I'm a Scorpio, and share the same birthday, not date, but and also RuPaul, a famous drag queen of North America, is also a Scorpio, and the third one, a famous Brazilian drag queen. So when you read about drag queens, those three are there in Kasei, and they're all. What are the odds? Mathematical, statistical odds that they all fall under the sign of Scorpio. Because Scorpio is a more goddess, feminine attribution to the sign, astrological sign. So I'm 50-50 to my past reincarnations from ancient Egypt. I'm not a drag, but I could do some drag for the building the Forgotten Goddess Temple. I do goddess it in my spiritual mystic table. You gotta bring the goddess as well, Gotta bring the goddess in my spiritual table, the mystic spiritual table, Gotta get the goddess, whatever names you give it by the trillions of billions of names that the goddess has, of heaven and earth, and dances with her brother the sun, being the moon, but nonetheless got those trillions of names included, But at my table has got to be the spiritual mystic table. It's got to be the goddess as well. So don't want to go into polemics or anything like that, and diatribes or anything of that matter. But I God bless the empire and God is kiss. I got those trillions of kisses by which I'm laying the foundations of the first empire, to be credited with trillions of kisses and millions and trillions of marching steps. Kisses, hugs, and marching steps and rock and roll. So money is to buy sell. That's why my DRT, debt refusion TV, the debt refusion TV for the creation of the the Universal Exchange Unit is best. If you get familiarized with all my transcripts of the past at least 3.5 years, you can go back 7 years on my YouTube channel, but see my fitness journey, and I'm still YouTubing, I guess, still a YouTuber, and rock and rolling every day, and it's my trinity: rock and roll, geopolitics, sports, and fitness. And that's how it is. And now I'm a bit extra stressed because the washer, and I gotta take responsibility. I wish I would have the money to get my anonymous friend money to just get one completely. So for that, I guess, I'm open for business 24/7. And since 2018, I've been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match. Since 2018, I've been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match. 2018, been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match, and around 2018, during the holidays, around mid-November 2018, my anonymous friend got me these red gloves, because Donald Trump, Granddaddy Trump made the mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel of 10% the first time he got elected, the first presidency. And of course, I got these red gloves, and I had started, and I still am, challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match, sportsmanship boxing match on the Canadian-U.S. border. And of course, the paradox is that I predicted what's happening now internationally, globally, worldwide in 2019 in October. I have proof for what I just said. I predicted an international conflagration was on the horizon in the coming 7 years in October 2019. So it's been more than 6 years now. It's been 6 years now. Because it was October, the first video that I posted, and I got proof because the video is still online, it was October 17, 2019, just before I had COVID right here. I had COVID right here. I was very sick and ill. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. I thought I was going to die. And in many ways I did die, and being reborn, nothing that I will to go back to, laying the foundations of my dream, the dancing goddess of the dragon kingdom, the empire, our empire. The motto of the dragon army is nobody is born a dragon, you become one. Pledge your legions. And the motto of our empire is the children, the youth. The children are innocent, eh? The children are innocent. The children are innocent. And for the 63, the 13 political entities of Canada to become the states, 13, so 50 states plus 13 is 63. So to get the Imperial 63 states of the American Canadian Empire, aka the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, aka the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, because we're gonna God bless, Goddess, kiss, that's gonna be also the motto of our empire. God bless, Goddess, kiss. You gotta give some kisses. It's not all about strength, as much as I understand. Peace through strength, to a certain degree, we have to have some love and understanding with it. Some love and understanding. We have to have some love and understanding and counterbalancing. Look at my own struggles as an individual part of the North American collective, as a Quebecer who puts myself in the effort for the French language, which we had made the great linguistic compromise here in Quebec. We made long ago the great linguistic compromise, but I have to do it myself. I have to also appreciate in the French language here in Quebec and encourage all who make an effort, and then applaud an effort and laud and contribute as much as I can to the maintenance of here in Quebec, my fellow brothers and sisters Quebecers, as a North American Quebecer Canadian who was born in the United States 3 times post 1776 and served in the United States Armed Forces 2 different times, 2 different wars. The wars were 156 years apart, and I recommend, if you read George Patton's Through a Glass Darkly, one of my favorite poems is George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. George Patton wrote a poem called Through a Glass Darkly, and of course Through a Glass Darkly discusses the belief in reincarnations. He believed in, of course, reincarnations, and he didn't mention that he was my wife and I was his wife, so we were married twice in past previous incarnations, 3,000 and 2,600 years ago. Once I was his wife, George Patton's wife, and once he was my wife. So I was once the husband of George Patton and the wife, and now I'm get that 50-50, balancing out equation for me in this December 9th, 2025, heading on 2026. So George Patton, through a glass darkly, is read in West Point and other military academies. He believed in reincarnations, but he mentions only his masculine male reincarnations. But he was my wife in a past life, George Patton. So, and I can challenge George Patton, Dragon Army to the power of 7, I guess. Rock and roll for the 50s and the 13th, for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, plumbers, electricians, the welders, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, construction workers, coast to coast, train conductors, truckers, those warehouse workers, those cashiers. We got the warehouse workers, we got the welders, we got some strikes, and we need that NACWP, the North American Collective Workers Party. We need the Global Dragon Union, the North American Collective Workers Party. We need the North American Collective Workers Party to congregate and do, of course, in the middle of the plurality of where we are now, with all the international conflagrations that are, of course, arising now to be in the concordat that we have to build and suffuse ourselves here in the North American Collective by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican complex of the 63 states, and via the implementation of my trinity of theories, being the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Death Row Fusion Theory, and the DFT, the Democratic Fusion Theory, that trinity of theories for the insurance of freedom and rehabilitation and rejuvenation of my brothers and sisters in these tough times, and the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act. We're gonna have to get that rock and rolling also to get the building of the 44 mass urban cities in case of a thermonuclear war. The mass 44 inner urban cities inside the ground, underground tunnels. We're gonna have to build mass city tunnel structures across North America in case of a thermonuclear war, and get the dome for defense coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and of course implement the CIT for the new 911 Total Dragon SSD security protocols. New 911 North American Dragons Total SSD security protocols have to be implemented, of course, parallel to my total mobile defense theory, which I cannot discuss over much because for years and years and years it has been in development ever since I crossed Canada coast to coast. But the total mobile defense theory, I cannot discuss it, but with the high-ranking security members of the apparatus of the armed forces of Canada, United States, and NORAD, NATO, and of course the FBI, RCMP, FBI, because it's binational security sensitive, and strategically for the NATO complex, we can extend it to our NATO allies, but North American centric. It is something which I started developing. Of course, it's all some written down on USB keys, and some, of course, developed on my long marches and implemented, but started in 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast. So most of my life, I pinpoint back to that point in time, an event in my life. Because before that, since like end of 2014 till about end of 2014 till about 2017 summer, I was of course depressed and suicidal for a few years, and suicidal, for a few years, and that's what it is with that, depression and suicidal was hardcore. I almost took my life out, and in 2017 I crossed Canada coast to coast. 2017 I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that was of course what it is. And of course, having crossed Canada coast to coast, that event made me have, of course, a realization of how many things we have here in the true north, strong and free. And supposedly I got this tatted up in 2003. Canada tatted up, so I got the flag always tatted up there, Canada, supposedly, because most of my life information prior to winter, January, February 2014, comes from journals that I kept. Some of them got damaged, but 2003, so more than 22 years ago, I got this tatted up, Canada. So we got to get that coast to coast. And the total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, and 4-letter acronym, TMDT, total mobile defense theory. When it's also the 5th letter in the parentheses, there's the S, the system. So the total mobile defense theory integrated with the S. I don't discuss it much because, like I said, it's by national security strategy, so I have to discuss it only with David McGinty, leaders of our police forces, security forces apparatus, the military forces apparatus, the highest ranking members, Pig, Hexet, and Pentagon. And maybe I was born under the Pentagon. Maybe I was born in Arlington, Virginia, under the Pentagon. Maybe in Berlin, East or West, because 1984, I guess it's East or West. East or West. Maybe Haifa. Maybe here in Montreal. I died here of COVID. Maybe it goes Transylvania. Supposedly maybe Transylvania, I guess. I died here of COVID in 2020 in January, February. Right here. And I lived here as a woman in well, at the beginning of the colonization, it wasn't Quebec and Canada as we have it today. It was I was I was the first born from a Fiji Roi, so I lived here as a woman between 1685 and 1735. Tough times, eh? It took hundreds of years to develop. How hard it was, eh? In the 1600s, 1700s, 18, 19, early 20th century, even, life was tough here. It was hard to develop Canada and Quebec, to build the railways, the highways, the hydroelectric dams, to develop what we have now. And now winter came early, eh? For a week it's been cold. Yesterday was super cold, the coldest day ever of 2025. It was very cold. It felt like minus 20. Even today, supposedly, it feels like minus 16. It's minus 8. And Friday felt like minus 20 as well. And Thursday was cold on Wednesday. So we had very, very cold days. Winter came early. Winter came early this year, eh? Supposed to snow is December 9th. This type of cold is like mid-January. This is January, January cold. Mid-January, early February cold. It's like winter. Is not officially winter yet. It's still autumn, but we got that big winter cold. It was really, really cold. It's been, I don't remember in a few years since we haven't had it this early. For my recollection of personal memory, which kind of blocks out before February 2014, which is a long time ago. February 2014 is more than 11 years and 10 months ago. So in 2 months is going to be 12 years. So it's almost 12 years. 11 years and 10 months. That's a long time ago. So before like February 2014, I have trouble remembering my life, It's like flashes and blackouts and flashes, It's not that important, I guess. I died here, several times. I'm being reborn. And crossing Canada, I got the ticket still. Crossing Canada in 2017, that made me come out of my depression, I was depressed, suicidal. And I came out of the depression. And for years and years and years, I've been told by several individuals and citizens that I am different due to my Asperger's, my Aspiesque condition. It's also known as HFA, and they merged in 2013. So Asperger's is known as HFA, high functioning autism. So it is a neurological mental divergent condition, which it took me years and years and years to accept, more than 9 years to accept. Because around 2015, autumn 2015, early 2016, several people since then have told me that I have Asperger's, and I have these troubles at social interactions, and sometimes vestimentary codes, and the way to dress, and dress codes, and social interactions, and certain things of that nature, which are more difficult for people on the spectrum of autism. So Asperger's is considered a milder form of autism, HFA. So we certainly have our strengths, eh? But there's a big problem, and I had many, many jobs in the past years. Is just losing them, losing the jobs. I lost a lot of jobs. Lost so many jobs just during COVID. I had many jobs, and I lost them in the past 7 years. More than 7 different jobs. More than a dozen jobs, and I lost them. One lasted, but one was contract because that was already pre-agreed that it was only going to be 4 months. But that was a nice experience. That was with the compost project in 2018. During COVID, I worked many jobs. I worked in a steel factory. I worked in a warehouse. I worked with the elderly and emergency elderly, and another warehouse. And before that as well, it's just problems. For my Aspie community, I gotta mention this because it's important. We're not a lot of people know what Asperger's is, as a matter of fact, but it's less than 1% of the population. It's less than 1%. Even yesterday, when I met somebody at the laundromat where I had to go, and like I said, the washer not working added a little bit of extra stress. But the Aspie community in North America it's about 0.44%. So because of our brains, there's a slight variations and mutations of the microscopic nano level. Now that it doesn't bulge out of the brain, it does not bulge out of exterior of the brain. So it's not visibly outwardly on the cranium, on the head, right? It's internal at the microscopic level. So it's inconclusive what causes Asperger's. It's inconclusive. We don't really know what causes it. But we know that it's a disability. I will say it's, in certain cases, yes, less able certain things, but very capable in other things. So a paradox in many ways. We have usually above average mathematical skills and above average verbal intelligence. So above average verbal intelligence and above average verbal intelligence, above average also mathematically inclinations to be good at math. But not all Aspies are good at computer science. Yes, because we're a small community, 0.44%, less than 1%, and you are the 99%, and you are typicals. There's a variation. So we're about 11 times for every neurotypical that's very good at computer science. There's about 11 Aspies, but we are not even 1 out of 300. So that's it's about 20% of Aspies. So 1/5 of Aspies who are good at computer science. But you got to keep in mind that that's not the consequence. That's not the majority of the Aspies who are good at computer science. Yes, it's higher representationally in terms of the statistical proportion. Mathematics, the statistical representation and the proportionality of the representation for Aspies is higher. Is higher. Way higher, but not all Aspies. In a parallel life, myself, I'm also an Aspie. This is the year darkness. We crossed into 2030. This is the year darkness. January 2030. There, I'm also an Aspie, and I build, design supercomputers, satellites, microchips, all sorts of gadgets, smartphones, supercomputers, microchips, and antennas, and satellites, sats, and ICBM rockets. So I'm a super scientist in that parallel life where there's the timeline is the year darkness 2030. But here I'm a philosopher, artist, and athlete, and great at geopolitics. We have special interests and we excel at those. Special interests for Aspies have to be encouraged as much as one can encourage those special interests. And I have my Holy Trinity, and my Holy Trinity has been for years and years and years and years. My ritual routines is being engaged sometimes with intensity, super focus, super concentration, intensity, super focus, super concentration, intensity, super focus, super concentration, intensity, super focus, super concentration. When I'm involved in rock and rolling, I write rock and roll songs, lyrics on the daily. So as an artist, and sports and fitness, and since 2017, that event changed my life. And unfortunately, in my community, Aspies, there's about 7-8 times higher the suicidal rates. There's 8 times higher the suicidal rates. 8 times higher the suicidal rates, and there's 8 times higher the suicidal rates. So, and the unemployment rate is very high. It stands at 80%. 80%. Unemployment for Aspies is 4 out of 5 Aspies. Think about that. Sometimes even higher than 80%. 80%, sometimes even higher than 80% Aspies. That's 4 out of 5. That's 4 out of 5. That's a lot of Aspies who are unemployed. Think about it, considering that we're such a small percentage. So it's really monstrous, right? If you think about it, the fact that within the Aspie community, being that we're such a small minority of neurodivergence, people who have this autism, HFA is the same as Asperger's. They merged. High functioning autism is basically Asperger's. That it is 80%. Can you imagine? 80%. That's 4 out of 5 Aspies. It's not that we don't get jobs, it's maintaining their jobs long term. That is very much where the problem lies. The maintaining long term employment because of our difference, right? So we see the world differently. And this way we see the world, sometimes social interaction, sometimes we can be pretty direct and straightforward, which can seem abrasive. And I gotta recommend, my anonymous friend got me a book. Well, this one is, to be honest, this one is not that helpful. There's some help to it. It's the one that I prefer better is the one that was loaned from a library during the spring and summer. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. This one is okay. This one is called Teaching Asperger's Students Social Skills Through Acting. All their world's a stage. All their world's a stage. All their world. All their world's a stage. I have to give. I've read only the first. I guess I got to the 45th page, so I read almost 45 pages. So I'm gonna get to finish it because it's 170 pages. I finished it over the weekend. It's 191 pages. So I basically read more than a quarter. Yeah, see, the brain calculates because so 44, almost 45 pages is a quarter basically. It's 25%. So I read a quarter. That's that just pops into my brain, just percentages. I love that, but it's an Aspie love though, eh? So I can do math for hours and hours and hours, especially, but not advanced math. I'm not a genius in mathematics, nor do I purport to be. And I have a high school diploma, but I dropped out of college. A lot of Aspies, it's 7 times, 8 times higher the dropout rates from high school than higher education, university and colleges for Aspies, and high depression and suicidal rates. I lived it, eh? And I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017 summer in August. We went to Vancouver in 2017 in August, 3.5 days by bus, and then in September of that same year we went to Halifax, Nova Scotia, Halifax. That's what it is. So that's why we crossed, and that made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow community. That made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow community, and that's what it is with the rock and rolling. And that's what we got to get on that drill with that, to get it on the left and on the right and in the middle, and of course to be super conscious and super intentional and super grateful for that event. Although I have some financial reverberations because I'm financially stressed. I have $10,000 in debt. Don't have credit cards. I have a credit line. So, a lot of the money which I owe still today, I pay and then I get more. I use, I pay. But I'm about $10,000 in debt. So, some $1,000 for that debt I took to finance that trip. But it was worth it because maybe I would have taken my life if I wanted. So crossing Canada coast to coast made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, North Americans, and always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, and always rock and rolling for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers on the road now coast to coast. And I have been calling for blah 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 for a mass financing of a public-private partnership in order to help citizens to cross Canada, to cross Canada coast to coast, and of course to cross Canada coast to coast, and for rehabilitation and to establish that strong esprit de corps, to see what such a great country we have, and so many things to visit, just in Quebec and just in Montreal, Hawk Island, Montreal, And it's a country worth fighting for. I believe my fellow Canadians, Americans, fusing the Canadian American people, to become the Imperial American Canadians, to fuse as one people here, as free, brave, strong, loving, and just and righteous. And interestingly enough, I had a wine over the full moon Sabbath, and I found these tarot cards. They were damaged in the rain, and they were gonna get mud on, and they were in the forest, and I thought it was gonna go to trash, so I wrapped them like a towel. I decided not to throw them away because at first they were like mushy, and they're damaged though. They're damaged, so I didn't salvage them completely. But so the card that I put to cover the wine was, I didn't draw it now, but see, this is what it looks like, the tarot, and there were some damages, Well, there was damage. See, there's damage on the back because they were really damaged, but I managed to save. This was the card that I picked from the 3 piles that I made on the new table. Gotta get that goddess on the table, and I said, that is justice, Justice. The card is justice. See, they're damaged on the side, and they incurred damage, but I guess I retrieved them. Just like myself, I guess I live with my scars and my trauma and my rah. Technically, the technical term is retrograde amnesia, but I have a very good memory, but of the past 11 years and 3/4, 11 years and 9 months, I would say. The past 11 years and 9 months, I remember very well. It's just, it gets, so the further I go, so 7 years I remember very well, 8 years I remember well, 9 years I remember well, 10 years I remember, then 11 years, plus it kind of gets blurred, and before 2014, like January, February, it gets blackout blurred, like flashes, like that's a long time ago, though, or it's gonna be 12 years. January, February, 2014 is a long time ago. So justice, 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 justice. What is justice? To bring justice, to bring justice. I guess maybe myself sometimes I gotta say sorry for certain things, and just let me know verbally. I don't like violence. I don't like violence. But I'm hyper vigilant because I live myself. I gotta go retrieve. I get myself a new deadline by the 24th of December. I'm probably gonna go tomorrow. I'm gonna write it in my agenda now, if it's not written already, to do it. Because due to my Asperger's, there's time management and things of that nature can be more difficult for us. You have to write it in the agenda. So I'm gonna write it now. This is my agenda. Time management can be more difficult for us in terms of, as we see the world differently, right? So due to the special interests, the special interests preoccupy sometimes for hours and hours and hours. I spend doing just geopolitical analysis because events happen on a daily basis, and then revise and make a conclusion, and then revise and then theorize and speculate from the North American integral perspective of the North American collective civilizational complex, meaning Canada, United States, always for the 63 perspective, always from the binational perspective. Because as Canadians, our primary foreign affairs interest in the United States in reciprocity vis-a-vis us has to be to establish the best, most cordial relations with the United States for us. Geopolitically, in foreign affairs, the United States has to be number one for us. And Canada has to be number one for the United States. Then is the other nation states, right? Just the way the civilizational historical development and just the geography, the geographical realities, the realities of our geography. So there's no way around that. There's just otherwise we're not discussing geopolitics. We're delving into our other realms. But for world peace, sure, but just we got to sectionalize the geopolitical realities of the regions and the regionalizations that are occurring now as we're speaking, the different alliances and the BRICS and the emerging SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Sino-Russia, Chinese, strengthening in the past 3.5 years of their military political alliances, and now on the horizon, the Japan-China's potential conflict. So I'm going to write tomorrow to go to, I'm going to send them an email also. Jewish General Hospital for archives retrieval. Archives retrieval. This is years and years and years ago, and I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head a few times, and I hit my head on the concrete, was bloodied up. I had a dislocated right arm, but I got back up right away, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital. And they had cracked back my right arm, they cracked it back in place. Crack, the doctors at the emergency, and they gave me some medication. And I wanna know what medication I was given, prescribed. And when was it? The date and the medication. They're probably in the archives. The date and the prescription. So the date and the prescriptions. What was the medication? What was it? I don't think it was, because this was more than 11 years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but so if it was, I want to know what it was in the meds that they gave me for the pain and for, I guess, healing and pain. What type of medicine was it? The prescriptions. Was it opioids? I don't think it was. I don't remember. I don't know what it was. Anyway, sometimes memory comes back, but I have a very good memory just of the past 7, 8 years is very, very good. 9 years is okay. 10 years gets a bit blurred. Then 11 years, then it's like flashes and blackout. Before January, February 2014, I just Just no, I can't be certain. I can't be sure, but maybe sometimes it comes back, you know. But some therapy, sometimes it's retrograde amnesia, I guess. But it doesn't really matter. What really matters is my work, especially all my work, geopolitical work, artistic work, since I crossed Canada coast to coast. Since I crossed Canada coast to coast, you know, coast to coast in 2017. That's when I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017 in summer. And from that event, coming out of my long depression over almost 3 years, I guess, 2 to 3 years, suicidal. I was suicidal, depressed, and that event, I was overweight. Since then, I started working out on my fitness journey every day. You know, I do everyday workout for hours, marching for hours every day. I march more than any general, I guess, of the complex. And of course, dancing is my favorite sport. And crossing Canada coast to coast made me establish that strong esprit de corps, you know, with my fellow Canadians. And that's when I got rock and rolling, and that's when I got to get that life affirming manner, and that's when I systematized and started losing weight. I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. 80 and 93 pounds. I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. So that was a lot of weight which I've done, and a lot of weight loss, and that is something which we have, of course, to be consequently when we got to get on that appellative manner of encouraging people to work out, train, exercise, and calling for the mass financing. Have been for years. If you check my transcripts, my initiatives, and my ideas, my theories have to be implemented across the North American collective at these times. You know, we can do it as a mass public-private partnership. That's my dream. The mass public-private partnership, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, the Imperial Republic, and complex as a mass public-private partnership, and to get for the fusion of Canada, the Phoenix People's Party, the NACWP, the North American Collective Workers' Party, to create the complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Dance League, to dance for the environment, the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, Security Service and Defense Legion, the SSD Security Service and Defense Legion. That's what we got, of course, to get that SSD in conjunction, of course, which we have to be written on the appellative forms, of course, of all the congregations where we have now coast to coast, ocean to ocean for SSD, and implementing the CIT DRT for the debt fusion tree, for the creation of the UE Universal Exchange Unit, and the Democratic Fusion Tree, and creating the two complementary covenant cooperative institution of fusing Canada and United States with the Imperial American Canadian Republic, for the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world in the terms of geopolitical matters, and to rehabilitate and rejuvenate the North American complex and fuse and become one people, the true North, strong and free. My brothers and sisters in the South, for the land of the free and the home of the brave is not enough. To be brave and free, we gotta get some loving and please millionaires, billionaires, NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA owners and players. Reduce the cost of the tickets by 44.9% and give some charity. Give some charity, millionaires, billionaires, for the children, for the youth. The motto of the Dragon Army is nobody is born a dragon. You gotta get. I'm working on the 40-day right, 40-day, of course, to be a training exercise for the standard operation for anybody to be able to be eligible to be a dragon of the Dragon Army, which is going to serve only for SSD, Security, Service, and Defense. Security, Service, and Defense, ensuring of freedom, liberty, and rehabilitation. We got to rebuild the ghettos here, North American ghettos. We got to rebuild the North American ghettos, the North American inner and urban cities, and our brothers and sisters who lost their liberty. And we got to do a great census before, as we implement these projects, as we implement these Trinity theories. We have to do a mass census of the population, a census of the Canadian population, and accord a new Imperial ID. We got to work together, Microsoft, my brother Scorpio, Bill Gates, and flock surveillance, and total surveillance for total security and total service and total defense, integrated to mass finance, fitness, and establish all concordium across the empire in public-private partnership, and hygiene and sanitation, and food security and housing security, and of course cooperation with all the internet security apparatus, of course coast to coast, ocean to ocean, integrated to mass finance citizens fitness and mass finance citizens inclusion in sports activity, and mass reconstruction of the public by a public-private partnership of all our infrastructure, the highways, the bridges, of course, because a lot of them are in a lot of need of good rebuilding and reparation, of course, the Imperial integrated, the rehabilitation of our criminal population, the rehabilitation of our criminal population, implementing the Imperial integrated criminal rehabilitation act to build those 44 tunnels, because a lot of people deserve third and fourth chances, and it is in our geopolitical interest for our brothers and sisters to rehabilitate and be aware of these tough geopolitical times and all vulnerabilities that we have, external threats for North American collective. As I predicted, what's happening now back in 2019 already. So my work mostly post 2017, summer 2017, when I got out of depression. I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. Still getting fit, or at least maintaining my fitness, but I want to get some more definition. But you know, get those red gloves, auctioning them for $1,000,000. Thank you, my anonymous friend. $1,000,000 to give half, to give my anonymous friend half. Auctioning everything that I have here, 93%. Pledge your allegiance, legions to our family. It's not all about the money. Some things are. And do the Imperial security protocol. When you hear the sirens of the police or the firefighters or the ambulance, do the 180 to the left, to the right, and let's get together rolling for our empire. Pledge your allegiance, legions. Let our army rise and be as a public Privee pawn ship, Adrian Hanna Dragon. God bless the coming of our empire. God is kiss.